So I've spent this morning looking over Warcraft logs and seeing exactly what bosses people are struggling with. And we're talking specifically 10-man because, as you know, 10-man's really my focus, 25-man is just GDKPs. And I'll be honest with you, when you take a look at the actual kill percentages for each of the bosses on 10-man Heroic, it starts to paint a picture and it's very clear which bosses people are actually struggling with, to the point where it's really clear on what are the hardest bosses in the raid. Some of them may surprise you, and rather than me sitting here and just giving you a full guide to every single boss in Dragonsoul, I feel like let's focus on the bosses that people are having problems with and see if I can give you some tips from our clears. So we do a one-night clear now, even though speed-wise we haven't got it down particularly quick yet, and we do have the odd wipe on things like Zon'ozz or Madness or Spine, but overall what we do works for us. So I'm just going to share with you what we do, because maybe it'll work for you as well. Because I'll be honest with you, we do Warlord Zon'ozz differently to pretty much every other kill that I've seen. Warmaster Blackhorn as well, we probably do a little bit different to most. And then I think actually getting solid information on not just a boss guide on how the mechanics work for Spine, but exactly how you execute each piece. Strap yourselves in because this might be a bit of a long one, because we're going to look at my previous kills on some of these bosses and actually just talk through what we do as a group. I won't bore you talking through the minor stupid details that you obviously know already, like when to tank swap and things like that, but I think some of the more minor details might actually help out. So I'm not going to be able to do it here. Let's head over to the PC and have a look. So literally all I'm going to do is go on kick.com/Scottejaye, because you can see my full resets and everything there. Pretty much all my raiding is done on Kick, although that is actually going to change over the next couple of days, because I do plan on not only streaming on Kick and Twitch, but also YouTube. I'll be doing at least a few hours every other day or something like that on YouTube, just gearing up ults, getting ready for MOP, preparation, looking at classes, all that sort of thing. So you'll be able to pretty much watch me anywhere you want. Why you'd want to watch me, I don't know. But anyway, so like I say, Zon'ozz is the first boss that we're going to focus on. Now, we do Zon'ozz slightly differently to most people, because most people do 7 bounces in total. So that'll be, it goes out to ranged, then into melee. And now melee are going to bounce it 3 times, ranged are going to bounce it 4 times, and obviously that 4th bounce from range is going to be the one that you let hit the boss and transition it. Now, we actually only do 5 because we find the timing works absolutely perfect. It puts less strain on the healers, and I don't see us changing to 7 anytime soon. We probably will at some point, but for now, the way we do it, it's a safe kill. We will talk about phase 2 in a second, but more on the orb. So you've seen the Void of the Unmakings just spawned. Now we have one single person go out and knock it back quite far. So you can see our Fire Mage went all the way to the back of the room to give us lots of time. This basically makes up for the lack of bounces. Of course, the more bounces you do, the more damage the boss is going to take, but we actually find that that extra couple of stacks is just not worth the extra risk. Like, we find it a lot more risky, obviously, the more bounces you do. So when we go into this phase, now all we do is split into 2 groups. We have the range go left, making sure they kill the Flowl first, and then obviously we're going to have 3 eyes to kill on our side. The tank is literally just standing there cleaving down the claw with the boss, and it's really important to make sure you're interrupting these eyes. So even though they've not got a cast bar, when you see them crouched down, that means it's time to interrupt them. And you'll see me basically controlling one the entire time. So one eye will never ever cast. And then we have our mages just use their counter spell on the other 2 as and when they can, until I can basically take over once my target's dead. And then obviously the melee are going around the other side doing something very similar, and then we're all meeting back at the claw and basically just focus on Zon'ozz and cleave off of Zon'ozz onto the claw. Because as long as the tank stood there, it'll be absolutely fine. On this particular pull, we actually messed up. We messed up with the bounce, like the first bounce going back into the boss, so we actually went into the next Black Blood phase very, very early. We still managed to salvage it, and it's a kill, but when you're first starting to progress on it, if you haven't started already, DPS could be an issue. So where we've already got a few weeks worth of heroic gear, we can kind of make this mistake and it doesn't matter too much. You might need to wipe potentially if you actually hit the boss too early. But once we've cleared this phase up again, we're into phase 1. This is where we do things slightly differently. We can see there's just over a minute left on the Enrage. So what we're actually going to do now is just pop Bloodlust and we're going to nuke. So if we've got somewhere between like a minute and a half-ish, if we're doing the bounces right, it should be about a minute and a half. Then like you just saw, we had our Resto Druid run all the way to the far side of the room with the orb, and obviously use his personal cooldowns to then knock it back. Now we're slowly kiting the boss away while we're just getting the full benefit of Lust with basically no other mechanics going on and just nuking the boss. At this point, we're going to let it in, and we know all we've got is 14% left, and we're just going to stand there, basically blow any raid cooldowns we've got left during this Black Blood phase, ignore all the ads, and nuke the boss. Now, this is the bit where, depending on how long you end up in each of the phase ones, depends on sort of what timer and what percentage you're going to pop Lust. But generally, you're going to do 3 of these Black Blood phases, and then once you get out that third one, you can pretty much finish the claw off, safely Bloodlust, and full send on the boss, and really, you're just focusing on the tank and dispels. And really, that's Zon'ozz. Obviously, there's other mechanics going on, but this isn't a guide. This is just assuming that you've already watched guides and you know what the mechanics are. Highlighting just the things we do different is we only do 5 bounces, so that's 25% extra damage on the boss each time. So that's going to be a total of 75% because we're going to do 3 of those phases. Then we're going to kite the orb really far away, nuke the boss, and then hopefully get to loot it at the end. And then when it comes to Blackhorn, now Blackhorn, you would think there's not that much you can do different. But when it comes to actually soaking the damage on the ship, I think for phase 1, that's the most important thing. And I would say the only thing we do possibly differently to other people is we have our off-tank solo soaking everything. Of course, for the big soak, when you get the really big void zone that you all need to get into, we're all getting into that, which you get to see nicely here. But all the smaller puddles, we just have our off-tank just running around and taking them solo. Now, if there's the odd small soak around that your Holy Pally can jump into with Divine Protection, of course, we have ours do that. If you've got a couple of people that are just stood next to each other and you communicate well to soak, then that's fine. But generally, as long as you can kill the Drakes in one phase, so when the 2 Drakes get chained in, if you can take both of those out by assigning separate groups to each one, you'll find that as long as you're doing the big soaks and killing the sappers, then just having one person solo soaking as much of the smaller ones as they can, and again, we have a Blood DK doing it, so he can AMS, he can use his big cooldowns, and, you know, then let the stacks drop off and then start soaking again. Letting a few of them go through, you're still going to get Blackhorn down before the ship's ever near death. Now, we do 2 heal this, and I've seen a lot of people 3 healing it. Quite honestly, I think 3 healing it is absolutely viable, and you can do that, but doing it with 2 just means you've got that much more DPS that you can dispatch of Garryona pretty quickly, and obviously get Warmaster Blackhorn killed as quickly as possible, because the amount of damage he starts doing at the end is really, really high. Now, the best thing here is making sure that you've got raid cooldowns assigned, the lower the health of the boss is for each of the disrupting roars that go out, because it does obviously very heavy raid-wide damage. And also, having a bear tank here is absolutely amazing, because the armor debuff that you're swapping on can be dodged. So we'll have times where our bear tank will be tanking for 10, 20, 30 seconds without even getting a stack, which is particularly useful. But quite honestly, once you've got the first phase down and you're just working on this part, you just want to get rid of the dragon as quickly as possible. Don't get hit by shockwaves, so spreading around the boss is important. Making sure your casters are spread around nicely, not too far away from the boss, but not close enough that you're going to get interrupted by the disrupting roar. Like I say, the main thing that we probably do slightly differently is solo soaking in the first phase, which just means everyone else can focus on pumping, and you've just got your off tank just running around, preferably a Blood DK, doing the soaking on his own. And now Spine. In my opinion, the hardest out of all of them, or the tightest when it comes to actually damage-wise and everything out of all of them. Once you get Spine down, you kind of know that with a little bit of practice, you're probably going to get Madness down shortly after, even though Madness on 10-man is no joke. So I'm just going to talk you through what we do in each stage. So firstly, when we drop down, we kill the top right, the top left, and the bottom left. We wait till the amalgamations come out, and we don't roll until they actually start moving. So we know by the time we do roll them off, we're going to have debuffs out for our Holy Pally to make sure that he's getting the debuffs on the right people. So if you're new to Heroic and you don't know what it is, there's a debuff goes out that's Death, and you need to dispel Death, and then it transforms into Earth. It'll always jump across the spine. So you can see us all on one side while the tanks are on the opposite side. This is so our Holy Pally can make sure that he's getting the debuffs onto the correct people, being the tanks. After this point, he'll just spread them around on everyone, because it does give a damage reduction buff, but of course, the damage reduction buff we want on the tanks first, and then everyone else kind of doesn't matter. Outside of just healing, that's our Holy Pally's main job. He's playing his own little game during this fight, while me and the Disc Priest are both healing. This can be particularly tricky later on, doing all the dispels while trying to heal and roll amalgamations off, but we'll get to that shortly. So basically what we do is we have our bear tank tanking the bloods, and he just keeps them all on one side, while we have our DK tanking the amalgamations next to it, and then when it's ready to burn, obviously we drag it over once we know there's 9 residues on the floor, and we blow it up. Now, cooldown usage here is incredibly important. You want to be doing each of these tendons in 2 phases. So you want to be making sure to use cooldowns on one, trinkets on the other. Obviously, using the Valor trinkets is particularly useful because you're going to get to use it on every tendon. Not necessarily every phase of each tendon, but every tendon at least, depending on your damage. And yeah, basically we're going to do this twice. We're going to get the tendon done, and then we move on. Once we finish the first tendon off, we're going to kill whatever corruption is furthest behind us, and then always the top left. Now, what we're going to do before we think about rolling is we're going to clear all the bloods out. So we kill as many bloods as we can, and then we're going to use the amalgamations that we've just popped out to soak up any of these bloods, and then we're going to roll. So we're happy that all the bloods have been cleaned. Now we're going to roll. This means we've got less adds for the rest of this phase. You want to use a cooldown during that roll as well, because it is a little bit spicy, obviously, especially with debuffs going out and having bloods being blown up, which does AoE damage as well. But now it's kind of business as usual. You're going to have your off tank taking the bloods and getting them all killed in one small spot, while your main tank has the amalgamation. There's not really much to talk about during this particular phase because it's more or less exactly the same as phase 1, except for you've got a few extra bloods. So we'll jump through to the next important part, which is obviously once we get through this plate. Now at this point, the bloods are starting to ramp up a bit, so is the damage. The healers might be struggling a little bit mana-wise, possibly, so we don't mess about with soaking bloods up here. If you can manage it, then you absolutely should. But instead, we just get the amalgamations out. As soon as the amalgamations are out and we've just got one corruption left, we pop cooldowns so we can do a roll. Now, like you can see, we've already got quite a lot of bloods up. So our first thing is getting rid of all of the debuffs that we can and then killing as many of these bloods in one spot as possible. The pressure starts to ramp up now. This is the most important part of the fight, and quite honestly, the bit where most people probably wipe. Nothing changes at the moment though. We're literally just nuking the amalgamation, we're having some light AoE on the bloods, just as much as the healers can handle, and trying to keep the bloods just under control. Once the amalgamation's low enough, of course, we're going to soak 9, and then we're going to pop the plate, and we're going to get, hopefully, as much damage on the tendon as possible with Bloodlust. The thing is, like you can see, there's already 16 residues on the floor, and there's lots of adds alive and more adds coming in. So we will get to a point soon where we're going to be kiting all of these adds, but at the moment we'd rather keep them under control, so when we blow this tendon, our off tank is sat next to the tendon still to be able to put some damage on it, because every bit of damage is going to count. So like you can see, it's blowing up now. We'll pop an AMZ, try and top people off, we'll send Lust and get as much damage out on this as possible. You'll notice that the off tank, which is Threatbur here, is actually getting kind of slapped because he's got a lot of adds on him, so he will need some love. But again, having all of that vengeance and having all of that big damage on the tendon from both tanks at this moment in time is incredibly important. And before Seal Armor Breach finishes, we already want the corruption behind us killed, so the amalgamation is either already on its way over, or like you can see, it's already here now on the left. Now, this is where stuff gets dangerous. We want to get as many bloods down in one place as we can, and like you just saw, the bear has done a runner. So he's going to now just run circles around the boss, and every time he does a full circle and gets round here, try and kill a few bloods just so they're all in one place on this right hand side, and then keep kiting round. If you know you've definitely got enough bloods on the floor, obviously you can alleviate a lot of raid damage by not killing any adds and just have him as he's circling round, instead just picking up as many of them as he can, because a lot of them will naturally go on your main tank. But it's incredibly important at this point for people to not feel like they should be AoEing. Don't spread dots with Pestilence, don't spread Rend with Thunderclap or anything like that. It should be pure single target on the amalgamation, and then pure single target on the tendon for the second time, and really now it's just full send. Everyone should be just focusing on pumping that tendon, including the off tank. Like you can see, all the bloods are gathered up now. That's because we've called him to run in and start nuking the tendon, because it's kind of like, well, if he dies, we've got army, we can do things to still survive. But it's more important to make sure that this dies 100% and you don't end up having like a 2% tendon wipe or something, because that is painful. Trust me, I've seen it many times. And that's Spine. I did say this was probably going to be a long video, and I'm trying to not turn it into a guide, but I felt like with Spine, people probably have got the option of doing it in so many different ways that I'd rather just tell you exactly how we do it. You know, it works for us, it might work for you. And just for a real brief recap, again, you're doing the first phase as normal. After that, you're killing all of the bloods to soak them up with the amalgamations before you roll the amalgamations off. The next time, you're just rolling immediately, and then obviously you're doing everything as normal up until you've exposed the tendon once, and then from then on, the druid or your off tank, whatever it is, a prot warrior in particular is really strong there, is kiting around until he needs to come back to nuke the tendon when it's out for the second time. Oh god, and now madness. I'm just going to give you some things that work for us, because quite honestly, there's so many ways you can do this, and even I want to change the way we do it. So at the moment, we do actually use 2 full-fledged tanks. So we use a Blood DK and a Feral Druid. Now, what I actually want to start doing as of maybe next reset or the reset after is only use 1 tank. So you can have the impals soaked by an Arcane Mage, for example, which, to be fair, is probably what we're going to use, because they can soak 1 impal on every platform just using Invis. Now, I know there's other classes that can do it, like if you've got a Shadow Priest or a Hunter or whatever, but we're going to go with the Arcane Mage because we did see some early success with doing it like that anyway. But this does mean that a very tight DPS fight is not tight anymore if you can just go down to using 1 tank. Now, we 3 heal it, and quite honestly, there's not much outside of the whole GUID thing that you need to worry about. If you don't know what that is, you can see using a weak aura that shows you basically the 2 people in your group with the lowest GUID, which means they're going to be the 2 people that get hit by the crash from the mutated corruptions. So to reduce the amount of healing needed massively, you've just got those 2 people standing out, 1 either side. Everyone else stood in the middle, and they're the ones that are always getting clapped. Now, the important thing when it comes to maximizing damage is all around spell weave. So like you'll see, we intentionally don't kill them bloods until we can get them over by the wing, because the more adds you've got near each other, the more spell weave damage is going to be going off from everything. So you want to know what abilities you've got that proc spell weave reliably every 4 seconds, and obviously make sure that you're getting the most out of that in terms of damage. Now, we don't do the platforms any differently to anybody else. We start on the platform where Frau is, and then we run all the way to the far left, and then basically work our way right. Pretty much everyone does that, and I don't really see that being much different unless you're going for the achievement. Now, the way we actually handle each platform is we never get the tentacle, like the arm tentacle or the wing, below 90%, or we try our best not to. Get it around 92, 93, that's fine, because under 90% is when you start getting the ticking AoE damage, and we find that we don't need to put ourselves under more pressure in terms of healing because we have enough DPS to beat the enraged timer. And like you can see here, we're all stacked. We've got our 2 people out, which is Flow Pala, which is the Holy Paladin on one side, Stark on the other side, which is the Hunter, and we're just nuking into the corruption. Now, having good cooldown set up for Impal is obviously incredibly important. The first platform, you don't need cooldowns because you've got Dream, which is your extra action button. On the second platform, you could use personals. Third, you could use externals. And then on the fourth, you've got your personals back. But organise your raid cooldowns, whatever works for you. The first parasite we get, we always put at the corruption, and then we try and make sure that this corruption dies almost as the second parasite's about to come out. And then we put the second parasite next to the boss's arm or wing, depending on what platform we're on, obviously. So like you can see, the tentacle's going over by the arm. We can drag the bloods over. Now we've got the parasite, we've got the bloods, and we've got the arm that we can do maximum spell weave damage with, so everything just dies that much quicker. Now, I'm not going to talk about them anymore because, quite honestly, all platforms are the same except for the last one, because on the last one, you've got the bolt to deal with where the bolt isn't slowed. So you have to somehow deal with all of that extra damage that's going to go out, and I'll just show you how we do that, and then we'll move on to the last platform, and then call it a day. Now, this is the one where we definitely don't want to be under 90%, and everything's the same here except we're bloodlusting. We bloodlust this corruption, and we absolutely nuke the life out of it. We do the parasite exactly the same as normal, but because the bolt's not slowed, we all stack in on the tank for the bolt, and we blow a load of raid cooldowns. You'll be able to see exactly what we use when we stack in, because we're going to start moving in now because the bolt's coming in. We use barrier. We have the raid cooldown from the 4 sets from our tanks. We use AMZ, Rally as well. We just don't use Spirit Link, and we don't use Aura Mastery because we want those for the final wing tentacle. So now we've got the bloods up. We want to finish the corruptions off before we do the bloods because we want the bloods for the extra spell weave damage on the final wing. So as soon as we've done this, we're dumping the parasite over next to the wing as well, and everything is basically business as usual. Of course, when you get the little tentacles that come out at 70% and 40%, you're going to have to make sure you single target those like you have on previous platforms, but really now it's just racing to beat the Cataclysm timer to get to the final platform that can take 13 minutes to get to, and you wipe on. Now, how we handle this last phase is we get the boss to about 18%, and then we wait for these 3 fragments to come in. We nuke the 3 fragments, and obviously the most important thing that you can do is if you're targeted by shrapnel, you have to use your extra action button, which is Dream, which is a damage reduction cooldown. If for some reason you don't kill them in time and you get 2, then you're going to have to use a personal as well. We wait for the 2 big guys to come in, tank them in the time zone to begin with and nuke them down, and then we drag the last one when it's kind of low over to the boss for a bit of spell weave cleave, and we nuke the boss to 15%. Once we get the boss to 15%, this is when the new mechanic happens, and they're the bloods. You can see over the back of the room the congealing blood spawning. These need to be slowed, so we use Cone of Cold, Blast Wave, Traps Down, I even Earthbind Totem, and you've just got to nuke them really, really fast before they reach the boss, because any that reach the boss heal it. Now the aim is to get the boss around 12%, so we're ready for the next set of bloods, but first of all we want to wait for the fragments. So we're kind of happy with what percentage the boss is on at the moment, so we wait. If you've got exceptionally high DPS, you could push 2 lots of bloods before these ads come, but we don't. We just play it safe and just go a bit steady. So now we're killing these 3 fragments again, and once these 3 fragments are dead, we're then waiting for the big ones once more. But this is where we do something really cheesy, because this is actually the last set of ads that we even kill, but now we're all back on the boss. You'll notice we're all ignoring the big ads completely, and we've just got our tank picking them up, and you'll see him in a second jump off the platform. Now he's literally just running backwards and forwards, because every time you jump across on a platform, you get a speed increase. So he's jumping backwards and forwards and running around in circles with the ads. They can't keep up with him, so he's taking literally no damage. They teleport to him, but when they teleport to him, he's already got the speed buff. So we're just dealing with everything else in the fight, getting it sub 10% and killing the bloods, then getting it sub 5% and killing the bloods, and then obviously finishing the boss off. And he's just running around in circles, doing nothing. This gives us so much time. You can see at the moment we've still got 20 seconds before even the fragments spawn. But we do only have about 30 seconds on the Enrage, but we did let a few bloods through on this particular attempt. So the boss did heal a little bit, but not ridiculous amounts. It didn't cost us the kill. But now it's pretty much just kill the boss. There's nothing else to do. There's no more ads. The fragments have just come up. So if you get shrapnel, then obviously make sure that you use your extra action button, but blow all raid cooldowns and win. Now, honestly, the big cheesy part there that we do is the jump in over the platforms with a tank. So we only have to kill 1 round of ads and then we don't touch them again. And it feels kind of bad that you've had to sit through the whole video to actually get to that bit, which might be incredibly important, but sorry about that. But anyway, I'm going to go because that was a long recording session. You don't know how many times I was saying corruptions when I was talking about tentacles and bloods when I'm talking about parasites and having to say the same thing over and over again. So, oh God, please feel sorry for me. I'm joking. But anyway, if you enjoyed the video, as always, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.